Well, with more on both Republican and Democratic primaries, we're now joined by Politico reporter Daniel Lippman. Daniel, good to see you again. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So listen, I do want to begin here with Donald Trump. Another victory in Michigan, his fifth win in as many states. Super Tuesday still 6 days away. But I'm wondering, when you look at all of this, what does it say to you about where the Republican Party is right now? Because we have seen, I guess, more traditional Republicans speak out against Donald Trump, warn about Donald Trump. But that's not stopping the former president from winning these decisive victories.
Yeah, he doesn't have 100% of the vote, of course, but he does have the party pretty locked down, and there's no risk that he will lose the convention. The problem is pivoting to the general election. He has tried to move away from his attacks on Nikki Haley. His campaign is trying to tell him to stop the mentions anymore since they think that she's irrelevant. But even on Sunday, he went back after Haley again, calling her bird brain, brain dead. And so that is not going to make it easy for Trump to win over those Haley supporters for the general election. And so that's a real concern among Republicans, in addition to all the legal cases that he might be facing the next 6 months.
Yeah, a couple of things to break down there. Let's begin with Nikki Haley, because, she has not won a single state in this primary process so far. But she continues to warn Republicans. She says that Donald Trump cannot win a general election because there essentially are too many doubts about him. How true do you think that assessment is?
I think she is not totally wrong, because you have 1 in 5 Republican voters so far saying that they won't vote for Donald Trump in a general election. And so he is going to have to get disaffected Democrats, independents to come to his side if he's losing 1/5 of Republicans. And so there's a lot of people who don't like the chaos that descended on D.C. when he was in charge. They don't want a president that they can't look up to if you have kids. And they are worried that he could pull out of NATO, for example, and throw international alliances up in the air. And so I think that Haley has stayed in to try to keep her influence in the party, see if she can negotiate with him a little bit in terms of some of his policies. But she is also looking to 2028, where she doesn't want to stay in too long because she doesn't want to anger Republicans who think that she should see the writing on the wall and call it quits.
Yeah, and of course, as I said, Super Tuesday is coming up. Nikki Haley says she'll stay in until then, hasn't made a commitment beyond Super Tuesday. But, it does, as you say, look like Donald Trump has the lock on the nomination right now. But there is still this question about how well he can campaign in the next calendar year. If and when he actually gets that nomination, up against that, he's already lost these 2 civil cases, fined more than $83 million for defaming E. Jean Carroll, who says Trump raped her, fined $355 million for the fraud case brought on by the state of New York, and his first criminal trial begins on March 25. So how effectively can Donald Trump really be on the campaign trail given all these legal pitfalls that he faces?
Well, he has made a very concerted decision to take advantage as best he can of the legal cases where he goes to hearings where he doesn't even have to show up. And then he will make a speech to either to the judge or to the press gathered outside. And so those are almost campaign stops for him. And he wants to make himself a martyr. And kind of that resonates with the economy and how quickly it has moved to an information. If you're a manufacturing worker, your job has sometimes been shipped to Mexico or to Asia. And so there's still a lot of discontent in the country that he is tapping into. The problem with these legal cases if he loses a felony charge from Jack Smith about January 6th, or if he loses in Georgia, then that's going to be a real blow, because there's a lot of Americans who will not want to vote for a felon for the Oval Office. I am less worried if he loses the case in New York about that porn star, because people can dismiss it as this was the law getting stretched out a little bit too much.
Yeah, so the vote interference in Georgia and, of course, interfering on January 6th, those are ones to watch out for. But, you talk about the challenges that Trump faces, but let's also talk about the challenges that Joe Biden faces. Again, he won Michigan last night, but a significant number of Democratic voters put on their ballots uncommitted. Given the doubts being expressed about Biden among certain Democratic voters right now, does this uncommitted movement present another challenge for Biden's own re-election hopes?
Well, the uncommitted vote yesterday was pretty consequence-free, cost-free. It was not going to result in Donald Trump getting elected. But the White House is clearly concerned about it. They have sent the top campaign manager, they've sent national security officials to Michigan in the last month or two to hear from that community, from the Arab American community, and hear what they have to say in terms of their opposition to Biden's Israel and Gaza policy. The White House will argue that, and has argued, that the situation would be much worse if Biden had stopped talking to Netanyahu or had written him off completely, that they can pressure the Israelis behind the scenes. But they don't have a perfect track record on that. And there's still a lot of humanitarian aid that is not getting through. And this is causing Biden a political problem because a lot of young people are much more liberal on a range of issues, but especially Israel-Palestine. And they will have a big choice to make. Do they vote for Biden, even if they don't like his Israel policy, or do they vote for Trump or stay home, which would have the effect of helping Trump, when Trump is even more hawkish on Israel and less sympathetic to the Palestinians? So it's a real bind.
Mm-hmm. Listen, I have less than a minute, but I do have to ask you this, Daniel, because, Michigan is the one of a handful of states that is expected to essentially decide the presidential vote in November. Given that, can you draw any lessons, see any signs about the upcoming general election from how things played out last night in Michigan?
You can't extrapolate too much, but there is concern on the left about how Biden has done, about his age. So not everyone voting uncommitted was about Israel-Palestine. And it's hard for him to sell his agenda when his voice and his kind of energy is not what it was 4 years ago and not what it was 20 years ago. And so that's a real concern among Democrats. The majority of voters writ large don't want either Trump or Biden. And so it wouldn't shock me if Biden at the end of the primary cycle says, hey, I want someone else to run, and then you have a very contested convention, which would be candy for us journalists.
Okay, well, and a chance for you and I to speak again. But until then, Daniel, thank you for this. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you.